Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 13.
Okay.
And specifically, we're using these excerpts from MCS Exodus chapter 13. This is, after the Israelites escaped Egypt. It wasn't over, their journey.
Yeah.
It was just beginning.
Right.
This chapter really digs into, what it means to start fresh and kind of embrace that redemption and never forget where you came from, both literally and spiritually, I think.
Yeah, it's such a crucial point in the narrative. It's not just about escaping, right?
Right.
It's about grasping what this freedom actually means and really seeing God's hand in it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So right off the bat, we're hit with this instruction about setting aside the firstborn, both children and animals. What do you make of that?
It's really a powerful symbol. It's about sanctification. They're acknowledging God's role in their liberation by making this dedication. It's almost like they're saying, this new life, this freedom, it all belongs to God.
Oh, that's interesting.
It sets them apart, it marks them as God's chosen people.
And then it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
There's this strong emphasis on remembering their exodus from Egypt, right?
Right.
Coupled with this instruction to avoid hametz. That's the leavened bread.
Yeah.
Now, unleavened bread's fine, but why all the fuss over the leavened kind?
Well, the text actually makes this connection between hametz and pride.
Oh, okay.
Leavened bread, it rises, it puffs up, kind of like a prideful heart,
Oh, I see.
Even small things can get in the way of our spiritual growth if they just feed our ego.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is remembering tied to the covenant with Abraham then?
Absolutely. That connection is crucial because it really highlights that it's not about what they do. It's about God's promise, his faithfulness to them.
That's really interesting. So the text then lists all those groups living in Canaan, the Canaanites, Hittites, all the Zeicites, and then it says, observe this ceremony. Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you might think so at first glance, but the number 5, because there are 5 groups listed, actually has some significance.
Okay.
5 often represents this kind of incompleteness, the need for grace. So it's like a hint that this redemption, while it's monumental, it's not the final one.
Right.
And observe, the word observe. Well, the original Hebrew leans more towards serve, actually.
Oh.
So it's less about passive observation and more about active worship through serving.
Action speaks louder than words.
Yeah.
Okay, then we get to the Festival of Unleavened Bread.
Right.
Again, no yeast, no hametz.
Right.
Why such a big deal about this stuff?
So think about it. It's like removing not just the sin, but the very things that can lead to it. It's proactive, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And it's interesting how much emphasis they put on sharing this with the children, keeping that memory, that meaning alive for future generations.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's about transmitting this legacy of faith, ensuring future generations actually grasp the why.
Exactly.
Okay, so going back to the firstborn, this time it says to set apart the firstborn animals, but to redeem the firstborn sons. Is there a distinction there?
Set apart is a little misleading, actually. The original Hebrew implies an actual transfer of ownership, not just dedication. So for a donkey, you could offer a lamb in its place. That's the redemption part.
I see.
But redeeming the firstborn son wasn't optional. It had to happen.
So with animals, there's a choice. But with humans, the connection's non-negotiable.
Yeah. It prioritizes the spiritual. It's continually driving this point home, telling them to explain this to their kids, reinforcing the importance of those stories, the meaning. You might even say that. You might even say that this remembering, this act of remembering, is an act of worship. By keeping that memory alive, they're actively acknowledging God's role.
It's amazing how this chapter just weaves together history, law, theology, even geography into this powerful narrative.
Yeah.
And speaking of geography, I'm curious about the route they took. The text mentions the Sea of Suf. Is that the Red Sea?
That's how it's traditionally understood, yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting that God led them through the desert, this roundabout route. It really speaks volumes. It emphasizes their complete dependence on God. They were in the middle of nowhere, literally, with only their faith.
Makes you wonder, what detours are we taking in our own lives?
Yeah.
That are ultimately for our own good,
Right.
Seems counterintuitive that God would lead them away from the Philistines. Were they really that much of a threat?
Well, remember, they had just escaped centuries of slavery.
Oh, right.
They weren't exactly a seasoned army.
True.
God knew that facing a powerful enemy like that so early on would be disastrous, Could have crushed their spirits.
Right. Maybe even tempted them to turn back.
Exactly. He was pacing those challenges, giving them room to grow stronger before hitting a major obstacle.
So he was prioritizing their long-term growth over instant gratification.
Yeah, I think so. And that idea, preparation, gradual growth, it's so relevant to us, isn't it?
It is.
We want instant results, but true transformation takes time, it takes patience, and a willingness to kind of embrace the detours.
That makes sense. This begs the question, what does this all mean for us? We're like modern-day Israelites in a way, navigating our own deserts.
Yeah. What are we leaving behind? What hammets do we need to let go of to fully embrace our own journey of faith, right? What pride, what worldly attachments?
Oh, that's a good question. It's not just about what we discard, though. It's also about what we carry with us, right? Like those physical reminders, the stories, the traditions, they keep the memory alive. Speaking of which, the detail about Joseph's bones being carried out of Egypt always struck me as odd. Why was that so important?
Well, it's a powerful symbol, a complete break with the old ways. They were leaving everything behind, even the remains of their ancestors, to embrace this new life, They were carrying their past, but also leaving it behind.
So it's like a symbolic letting go.
Right.
And we see that same theme of moving forward while honoring the past in how they were instructed to pass these stories down to future generations.
Absolutely. There's this passing of the torch, so to speak. It highlights how vital it is to share those experiences and insights with those who come after us.
Yeah.
Make sure those lessons of the past aren't lost.
Right, yeah. It's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture when we're caught up in the day-to-day, but this chapter, it reminds us we're all on this journey, a pilgrimage of sorts. And just like the Israelites, we can trust that God's with us every step of the way, even when the path isn't clear.
They had that pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. And just like them, we have our own signs, those moments of grace that remind us, even when we can't see, He's there.
It's like those little nudges, those whispers of wisdom that keep us moving, even when we feel lost. Those whispers of wisdom, they help us stay the course when things get tough. But what about those times when we feel like totally lost? When we're not sure we're on the right path at all?
We've all been there. It's human,
Yeah.
To feel uncertain, to doubt, to question. Even in those moments, though, it's important to remember that God is still there, even if we can't sense it.
So how do we connect with that sense of God's presence when we feel, so disconnected?
Practices like prayer, meditation, or even just spending time in nature, those can be really powerful, creating that space for stillness, for listening to that quiet voice inside.
And community can be a source of support, too, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We weren't meant to go it alone. Surrounding yourself with people who encourage you, challenge you, remind you of God's love, that can make a world of difference. It's like having your own personal cheerleading squad, on this journey of faith.
I love that. We could all use a good cheerleading squad sometimes. So how does studying a text like Exodus, how does that actually help us navigate our own journeys?
The Bible, it's full of stories and teachings that offer guidance for our lives. It's like a roadmap for the soul. It points us in the right direction. And while, the specific situations might be different, the underlying principles, those are timeless.
So it's about finding those universal truths, those timeless lessons that transcend time and culture, and applying them to our own lives, our own unique situations.
Exactly. That's where the real transformation happens, when we allow these ancient texts to challenge us, to inspire us to live more authentically, more purposefully, more in alignment with who we really are.
It sounds like it's about so much more than just reading the words, right? It's about letting those words really sink in and transform us from the inside out.
You could say that it's about letting those stories become our story.
One thing that really strikes me in this chapter is the emphasis on remembering. Not just remembering the events, but remembering the meaning behind them, remembering the why.
Yes. It's not just about what happened. It's about understanding what it meant, what it taught them about God, about themselves, about freedom and redemption. It's like they're being told to create a culture of remembrance, to weave those stories into their lives.
And not just for their own benefit. It's about passing those lessons on.
Right.
To future generations.
Exactly. It's about making sure that the story doesn't end with them. It's about creating a legacy of faith, a heritage of understanding that can be passed down.
Like planting seeds. That will bear fruit long after we're gone.
I love that. And just like seeds need the right conditions to grow, those stories need to be nurtured, tended to, shared with love and intention.
I'm thinking about those verses where they're told to explain the meaning of the unleavened bread to their children. It's not just, hey, we eat this flat bread because God said so. It's about really engaging them, inviting them to explore that deeper symbolism.
It's about encouraging them to think critically, to wrestle with the why behind it all. Because ultimately, it's not about the rituals, is it? It's about what they represent, what they teach us about our relationship with God, with ourselves, with each other.
The rituals are just a means to an end. They're tools that help us connect with something bigger, something that takes us beyond the everyday.
And that's where the real transformation can happen, when we move beyond that surface level and dig into that deeper meaning, the symbolism. That's when the story comes alive and speaks to us in a way that, well, transcends time and culture.
It's like we're opening a treasure chest, uncovering these precious gems that have been hidden for centuries.
And like those gems, those insights can light our path. They can help us navigate, the complexities of life.
This has been an amazing journey. We've explored redemption, sanctification, remembrance, and God's constant guidance. But like any good deep dive, it's left us with, well, more questions than answers.
That's the best part. Those questions are what keep us curious, keep us seeking, keep us engaged.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Exodus chapter 13, what's one question, one thought-provoking prompt that you would leave our listeners with?
Well, if we think of the Israelites' Exodus as a metaphor for our own journeys of faith and growth, what hammets might we need to clear out? What beliefs, habits, or attachments might be preventing us from fully embracing our own liberation, our own journey towards wholeness?
It's a powerful question. It challenges us to really look at ourselves.
It invites us to imagine what true freedom could look like. What would it mean to embrace our own promised land?
That is definitely something to ponder. What metaphorical hammets needs to go so you can step fully into your own journey? It's a question worth exploring.
It's a journey worth taking, and one that promises great rewards for those who dare to embark on it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.